everybody, and welcome to another exciting, fun-filled, expeditious episode of Radiorama, where, as the name implies, I show you how to work on radios. And today we have a very large Telefunken Opus stereo 2114, big whopper of a set. This thing's got 11 tubes in it, and it's in really good cosmetic shape. It's been partially restored, but there's a lot of old components still left in it that need to go. It's got a weird issue where one side speaker is not as loud as the other, so I got to figure out what's going on there. Other than that, it works okay, but it just needs a refresh. Alright, here is it with the back removed. We have two gigantic forward-facing speakers and two medium-sized speakers that are on either side. I believe it's push-pull ECL 86 tubes, which are getting harder and harder to come by and getting rather pricey. So I think before I do anything else is I'm going to take these tubes out so I don't break them trying to remove the chassis, because that chassis has got to come out. And I'm thankful to see that it looks like the speakers actually unplug versus having to be desoldered, which is what a lot of German sets do, which is a real pain in the ass. So you just pull this real gently, and there's probably 6 or 8 screws holding the whole thing in. All of it will come out, including the front glass. Need to unscrew this screw here for the cord as well. Man, this thing's heavy. I really had to struggle manhandling this out of the cabinet. Let's take a look underneath and so let's see what's going on. What is it getting stuck on? Oh, it's just fucking heavy. Anyway, you can see the electrolytics have been replaced, which is good, but none of the paper caps have been touched, so that's not good. Those need to be replaced. There's a lot of them in here too. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I guess it's not a horrible amount. It's good the cross-aligned caps have been replaced. That's good. I like to see that. So let me find a way to secure this upside down so I can work on it. Okay, and I now got it properly set up and off of my wood surface table, so it's going to not get any scratches or anything. And I don't know what to say. I guess, like, basically this is just a whole lot of busy work. All of these, that guy's actually plastic, and so is this one. So I don't need to worry about those. But the rest of these are paper film and subject to leaking just as much as their American brethren across the ocean. So there's a lot in here. And so I just start pulling my capacitors in bunches, because I know there's a bunch of O2s and 047s in here. So instead of me having to get up and stand up and sit down many times, I'll just get a group of caps together. It goes a lot quicker. But I'll start replacing these one by one, starting with these two little guys. I'm especially keen on seeing anything that is in pairs. That means it has something to do with possible audio output, which could be affecting the sound of my speakers. So we'll see. Alright. Whoopee! I've gotten all the paper capacitors replaced. The ones that are still in here are either ceramic disc or plastic film or oil filled. They should be all fine. I am noticing something here. There's this like very toasty looking resistor. It's a 1/4 watt resistor hooked up to a 1 watt resistor. And what is that tube? Let's see. I don't know what that is. It looks like an ECH81 or something like that, but I'll have to measure the resistance on that guy. What is that supposed to be? 22? I'm not good at reading my resistors. That's why I have a cheater chart. Definitely want to check that. Definitely want to clean the contacts. There's like 16th million of these controls contacts, and they get dirty, and that can affect your performance. So that too could be a problem with why it's not sounding perfectly balanced. And the fun's not over yet, folks. There's still a bunch of capacitors up here, and just as awkward and equally to get at locations. But all those paper caps have got to go, along with these two guys on the output transformers. I don't know what's going on with this tube. It looks really not nice. ECL86. It looks like that's inside the tube. ECL86. Oh boy, I hope these guys aren't bad. Because I don't think we have any at the museum right now. But, you know, looks are one thing. It could be perfectly fine. But in the meantime, I need to replace the rest of these capacitors. Also added an audio input. I just soldered it directly to the back of these pins. This is a DIN connector. The real common format where it was in Europe. And we didn't really have that here. So every time I'd run in through stereo, I had to look up what the pins mean. And on these, it's this pin and this pin. It's like your right and left. And the center here is your ground. I used to halfway guess at how to do it. And as a result, there wouldn't be two stereo coming in. It's pretty stupid. Then again, I was a lot dumber back then. This thing is weird too. I noticed it has like a ton of fuses. 5 fuses. It looks like it's going to every section of the power transfer. That seems like a weird way to fuse a set, but I don't know. Someone could probably explain it to me what the advantage could possibly be. I can't think of any. Okay, all of the little capacitors have been placed on that board. I don't have any 330 puff capacitors. Those will have to wait till tomorrow. I go over to the museum and get some supplies, but I'm going to put this back in the cabinet and see if there's any improvement. Kind of doubt it. I'm suspecting this tube. There's a quad of these tubes. I didn't realize there was a quad of ECL86s, so it's like push-pull per channel. And if one of those is weak on one channel, that could definitely affect the other. So, well, not the other, it could affect itself. Like you could have a weak channel. So I'm going to put this back in the cabinet, hook it up, see what happens. All right, well, last night, more or less got it recapped. I put it back in the case and gave it a spin.
Hawaii doesn't have to look far. Wait.
But again, one channel seems to be engaging in stereo. I'm not sure if you can tell that in the phone. So, the problem that it had before still persists. That means it's going to be time to go in and start measuring some stuff. Oh yeah, I forgot to go to the museum and get capacitors. Crap. That's aggravating. That might be my problem because the 2 output transformers have some old capacitors that are still on top. But maybe I can temporarily tack something on. Yeah, I pulled the chassis out and I decided, you know, the first thing I'm going to do, because everyone forgets to do the simplest things first, test the tubes. And so I'm testing the output tubes. And these all look very, very well used. Then again, that is a hot tube. Minimum on the chart is supposed to be up to 70. It's measuring 12. So that one's pretty sick. Interestingly enough, when you compare it to the one that was next to it, it's measuring okay. Well, I say that, now it's not doing anything. Maybe I have the tubes on tester on the wrong side, so let me double check here. No, it's just that that one tube is really worn out. Basically emitting nothing. This one's a little tired too, but it's got some life in it. I noticed these are pretty slow to warm up, but then again, I think ECL86s are 2 EL89s in one bottle, so there's 2 tubes in there, or the equivalent. And you can see this is, it's still pretty slow to warm up, but it's still going. And I believe it's not even making the minimum. It still should This tube would probably not be an issue. I'm going to see if we have any more at the museum. I have one myself. That too is really tired, but still, it's like much better than the one before it. So I do have an extra one of these sitting around, so I'm gonna make sure it's any good. And I'll test the remainder of the tubes. And it could be because this one tube is basically dead. It's not getting, one channel is going to be noticeably weaker. What I'm doing now is I'm testing, there's 2 output tubes here and 2 over here. And so I'm assuming that's right and left. And I've noticed there's a newer General Electric tube in there, and you know it's considerably healthier. So I'm curious if the second one from that side is also going to test. This is an Amperex. If this tests strongly as well, strongly, I'd say these tubes. That last one was about average. It's still perfectly usable. It's really only when the tubes are barely working that they start to become noticeable. And yeah, these are slow warming up tubes. I'm guessing it must have a huge filament. Oh yeah, see, both tubes on the left side that one's actually pretty robust. It's almost at spec. I do have an extra one of these, so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to balance out these tubes and make sure that both sides are kind of matched as far as the quality goes. Well, it turned out there was a broken wire going from one of the speakers to the connection for the speaker plug, so now stereo works. Man, that sounds good. Anyway, I'm going to take the chassis out again and clean it, and then I'm going to clean the cabinet. And also, for some reason, there's a weird issue with the tuning. When I use the FM tuner, AM band wants to kind of go along with it. It's a little sticky too. I think it needs to be cleaned up and oiled, so I'll do that when I take the chassis out. Now that I've pulled the chassis out, I started looking to see what was going on with the tuner. And what it is, there's a nylon bushing there, and you can tell there's a little bit of old oil back there. So that's supposed to be kind of like a slip connection. It's not slipping because the grease is hardened up, so I'm going to put some grease up there in front of that bearing, see if I can work it in. Alright, now we can see when we use either FM or AM, we're not getting stuck. So all these little points here had to be lubricated. Restringing these is a total nightmare. This one's not too bad. Sabas are the worst. I spent 3 days trying to restring one time. Anyway, so electrically it's done, but I want to work on the cabinet a little bit. The cabinet is in very good shape, but it's going to get a little bit of a freshening up. Probably touch it up with some beeswax. I'm not going to put any Howard's or Old English on it because it's a light wood. Okay, well, this was easier. The finish is already in like pretty much perfect condition, so I'm just adding a little wax to the top of it. And I'll leave it on there for a little while, and then I wipe off the excess. And this never had a gloss finish, so I'm not going to wax it. The radio is now more or less ready to put back together again. I had a few little extra touch-ups with cleaning the front and the chassis off, but I think it's going to be a real purry radio if you like these kind of things. Some people don't like German sets because they're basically squares, and they all look the same, but they sound great.